So hi, everybody. We are coming to you live from Mystic, Connecticut for our Bosscast with Shaara Roman. Shaara is a board member, entrepreneur, former chief human resources officer, and author. She consults with leaders to create healthy workplaces by helping them build compelling cultures, design effective organizations, and align their people and programs to meet business goals. She was born in India, schooled in Nigeria and England, and lived in Greece before coming to the US to work her way through college. She has a deep leadership and executive experience and brings an authentic, creative, and solution-oriented approach to client engagement. She's a frequent speaker on topics of creating high-performing, authentic cultures and leaders, winning the war for talent, and women in entrepreneurship. She was an advisory board member and board member of organizations and an adjunct professor for the Georgetown University HR management program. And she is working on a book that will be published in early fall. She lives in Arlington with her husband and 2 teenage children and their mini Aussie Doodle. She enjoys the theater and art museums, but also loves going to her daughter's dance performances and watching her son's high school and travel soccer games. She has traveled the world, but has a couple of countries that she has not yet, but maybe she'll talk about here. But we're so happy to welcome Shaara Roman from the Silverene Group. And Shaara, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everyone. So great to be here. And Michelle, thanks for that great introduction. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Is everyone seeing? No, I don't know. Did that not look like it was sharing properly?
I could see it.
Oh, you could? Okay, sorry. There we go.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, fabulous. Well, I think you covered everything on the bio slide, so I am going to move on from here and just touch a little bit on the personal journey that you shared, because I think it's an important influence in terms of who I am and how I've ended up where I am. So as you mentioned, I was born in Bombay, India. My family and I moved very early on to Lagos, Nigeria, where I grew up and went to school, went back to India for a couple of years, then went to high school in England, went to Greece with my husband, who I met when I moved back to Nigeria after high school. We got married in Greece, and then we ended up many, many years ago in the US on the East Coast in Virginia, and I've pretty much lived here most of or all of my adult life. And one of the reasons I share this story is that, you know, growing up and living in so many different countries really taught me early on to sort of think about who I was, how I wanted to show up, what was important to me, and to really chart the path to be authentic and not be somebody else in order to try and fit in. And with that, you know, I also didn't take a very straight path to the top, so to speak. I had a very diverse career working in a lot of different types of organizations. And one thing that I feel really benefited me around sort of advice I got early on from some mentors was, you know, really think about the kind of opportunity that you want, the skills that you'll learn, and the people that you'll meet. And so I really prioritized that as a decision-making factor as I went into the work world and then started my own business, the Silverene Group, 6 years ago. And I didn't pursue jobs for the money. I didn't pursue jobs for the title or any of those sort of trappings that go along with it. But I really thought strategically about what is this opportunity going to do, you know, in terms of helping me build my skill set and helping me grow, and what can I really contribute to this organization so that I'm feeling good about my time here, but that I'm also kind of really taking away good stuff. And I was really lucky that I've worked over the course of my career with some really terrific women and terrific women in leadership, but there is there's sort of a myth out there, right? That there is a leadership gap among women and that there aren't enough women to fill positions. At least that's the excuse that we get told by the boys in the boys club who are sitting around the boardrooms and sitting around Congress and Senate and sitting in, you know, medical offices and all of that. And so if you sort of think about it, or you look at the data, women make up half of the US labor force. We are outnumber men in terms of earning bachelor's and master's degrees, and we're on par when it comes to medical and legal degrees. So then you look at who is sitting in the Fortune 500 CEO chair, who's sitting on the boards, who has the top jobs in the S&P companies, and who's in the C-suite in the top 1,000 companies. And you can see the gap, right? The purple are women, the blue or the teal are men, and there's just a huge gap across the board. And so, I believe that as a woman myself, I do whatever I can to help elevate women in the workforce. That's what I've done when I was in my corporate world, and part of what the work we do at the Silverene Group does, right, is to help build cultures where everybody can thrive and have success in organizations. And then if you look at women-owned businesses, and I don't know how many of your audience are sort of in the entrepreneurial space or in the corporate space, but there's been some really phenomenal growth as it relates to women in business and women entrepreneurs. So over the last 40, 50 years or so, there has been a 31 times increase of women-owned businesses. I mean, that's huge, right? And the employment that we have our employment has surged 40-fold. Revenues have grown over 217 times. But yet we only contribute to 8% of total employment out there. So our businesses are small, right? And from a revenue perspective, we're also only 4.3% of total revenue. So while we have made huge strides, and there's a lot of women-owned businesses and a lot of women feeling courageous and feeling confident to start their own businesses, we're still being held back, right? So the numbers are totally moving in the right direction, but for all of that growth, you would want to see increases in some of the areas like revenue and total employment in terms of who we're able to employ, or the amount of people we're able to employ. So that kind of says, well, what are the barriers to women's leadership, right? Why can't we be more equally or evenly represented? And there are four things that I've seen, and I'm sure many of your listeners also see. One is around stereotypes, right? There's stereotypes out there around women and what we can do and how we show up in the workplace, and whether or not we're going to take a step back because we might have children, and oh my goodness, I guess there's no father that's involved in having children, right? We have fewer connections in the workplace. We don't necessarily prioritize mentoring and sponsorship types of roles, and figuring out how we can use those relationships to move up the organization. And we don't have, they're not programs that are necessarily set up in organizations to really help us. And there's bias and discrimination still exists in the workforce, not only against women, but women of color, people who identify as LGBTQ+. So we have to sort of overcome some of those unconscious and conscious biases that are there, the microaggressions that exist in the workplace, that ultimately make people quit, right? Because women in particular are just sort of fed up of experiencing those types of things. And there's lack of flexibility. It's women have to take on being caregivers of parents, of children, of pets. There's a lot that we carry beyond the day-to-day work of our sort of day jobs that we're paid to do. So there's a lot that gets in our way of being able to rise to the top, or rise even up the ranks to where we might want to get. So, what do we do about it? And how can we sort of help each other, and what can we do as emerging leaders? And I come from, I believe very much that as women, we have some very unique gifts. We're great collaborators, we're great communicators, we have a great deal of empathy. And what we need to do is be able to take some of those things and really ask for what we need and what we deserve. And we really need to sort of develop the courage and use that courage that's in us to ask. Because I learned early on, and actually I come from a very matriarchal family, and it was, it was sort of the belief of, or I was told, if you don't ask, you'll never know if you'll get it or not. So always ask, and you can always be told no, right? But then I also embrace the, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, or beg for forgiveness later. So I balance both of those. But anyway, what are some things that I've employed myself and I've learned and honed over the years as I've been in this space? One is really find your passion. And it might sound a little trite. There's a lot of talk about purpose and passion sort of right now, but it is really important. It's important to know what makes you excited to get out of bed, what your moral compass is, what your work compass is, why you want to do what you do, because essentially that guides you through making those career choices, right? And just like I said that, making money, of course, it was important to me. I'm a Gen Xer, and definitely, making good money and sort of moving up the career ladder was something that was definitely a part of how I grew up. But I also knew that if I did something that was against my passion and my interests, that it wouldn't really serve me in the long run. And when times got tough, I wouldn't be able to get through. So really, whether you're staying in a in a business setting, in a corporate world, in a nonprofit world, or you're deciding to go out on your own, really think about what it is that you really want to do. Where could you sort of really leverage your talents and your skills so that you're shining and you're always leaning into what makes you great, as opposed to doing something that you might be trained to do, but doesn't really spark that passion and joy. And then I think the other trait, or the other idea, is finding the gap. I feel like that was something that I learned to do early on, and that I would advise those that are emerging leaders to sort of really think about when you're looking at a job, or you're looking at a task or a project or whatever it is that you're looking to do. Where are the things that are not happening, right? Where are the opportunities, even if it's to make something more efficient, or to streamline a process, or to come to a client with a different service or offering? Look for those opportunities. That's what's going to really differentiate you. That's what's going to allow you to bring those skills and perspectives to the table. That's going to allow you to innovate. So find those opportunities where there's a chance for you to sort of leverage them and bring your talents to bear. Find your cheerleaders. We are so good at being cheerleaders for everybody else, but we sort of neglect ourselves in terms of making sure that we have the right support systems in place. So Michelle, I know earlier on you were saying that you're on a trip with your sister. And, it could be your sister, could be your family, could be your friends, could be your neighbors, could be people you've worked with, your kids. I mean, in fact, when I decided to go out go into business on my own, I was, talking to all the grownups around me, right? And then I decided, one day we're sitting around the kitchen table, the kids are doing their homework, and I said, so what do you guys think about mommy starting her own business? This will mean some sacrifices. We may not be able to go on some big vacations for a while. And my daughter looked up, and she was 12 at the time. And she said, Mommy, grownups don't take enough risks. And if this is something you want to do, you should do it. And this was, over 6 years ago. And I have felt that she and my son and my husband and so many other people have been just tremendous support in my life. And so find those people and make sure that you surround yourself with folks that are going to encourage you, because you are going to screw up, and screw ups are good, right? Because we learn from those. The other thing is I tend to fly by the seat of my pants a little bit, and I am not exactly the most sort of rigid planner, but it is important to have a plan, and it doesn't have to be very detailed. But you really need to think about, where is it that I want to get to, whether it's in 3 years or 5 years, or you're starting a business. Well, what do I really want to accomplish? And you can change your plan. You can adapt your plan, but come up with that end goal, at least where it is for you, point in time. And then think about, what are the things I need to do to get there? When do I need to get there? What's the rough timeline? And sometimes you have to give yourself grace. As I was sharing earlier with you, Michelle, as we were chatting sort of pre-podcast, my husband quit his job earlier this year and decided to, he decided to go trek the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. And this is something that's been on his bucket list. And I was like, all supportive and all of this stuff. But what I've realized, or what I had to do, and my cheerleaders are the ones who actually helped me to do this, is I had to give myself some grace, because I was trying to do everything I was doing before and essentially do his job while he was gone, right? So, for those of you who are running a household, it's a lot of work. And if you've got a partner and you're splitting the work and all of a sudden you have to take that on, it's a lot. And so plans change, numbers change, forecasts change, and it's totally okay. So that's why you monitor and you evaluate and you update and you say, wait a second, I can't really hit this revenue target. I'm going to have to readjust. And you know what? If I'm in the workplace and I have someone else as a boss, I'm going to go have a conversation with them and see what the trade-offs can look like. So don't be afraid to do that. And talking about fear, really, get over your fear, right? Don't be intimidated by what you don't know. See it as an opportunity of sort of finding that gap and taking forward sort of your ideas and thinking about your strengths. There's a great quote by Henry Ford that said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me they wanted faster horses. And so that's where innovation comes from, right? When we come up with, we see a problem and we know that the horse and buggy isn't quite working. And we're like, okay, how do we solve this, right? Yes, we can add more horses. We can maybe give the horses some steroids, but ultimately that's only going to be incremental improvement, right? So if you have an idea, if you've got things that you want to share, don't worry about, just sort of get over that fear and don't let that hold you back from what you can really accomplish. And to that point, find your yes and be confident of what you can do and how your past experiences can inform what you want to do in the future. And a quick story here is when I first started my business, I went back to my alma mater and I was looking to teach. And I thought, I've got a lot of work experience. I've got a lot of experience in the space of people, culture, and strategy. Surely I can be a guest lecturer. Surely I can teach a class on leadership or culture. And I got connected to the guy who does the hiring for professors. And he sort of said, well, have you ever taught before? What's your experience in teaching? And have you written a curriculum? And I, of course, silly me was like, well, not exactly. I haven't sort of really done it this way. And I was putting the professors that had taught me in school on this higher pedestal. And needless to say, he was like, well, you need to go get some experience actually building curriculums, and then you can come back and teach. And as I listened to myself and I heard him speak back, I was just like, you are such a dummy. Why did you say what you said the way you said it? Because I have taught, or I had taught classes at that time. I had designed workshops and I had facilitated very rich discussions with senior leaders all through my career. And I knew that, I'm not a professor. I don't have a PhD in this space. I'm not an academic, but I can still help a group of people have a learning journey in the time that we are together. And so kind of the message here is be confident in what you know and what you can't do, and don't answer the question with a no. So really try to look and lean into where is that yes opportunity. And then I'm going to contradict myself right away and say, but learn how to say no, because saying no is also important. And you can't be all things to all people. You can't provide all services to every customer and client. So for me, as I started the Silverene group and was thinking about what it is that we want to do and what we and how do we want to really help the clients that need our help, I also thought about in my plan, what is it that we don't want to do? How do we not want to be known? And what are the things that are just, things that we could possibly do, but we're just not going to do it because it doesn't really fit in our sweet spot. It doesn't fit into that intersection of people strategy and culture. And so for us, it's things like we don't write policy manuals. We don't do compliance work in HR. That's just not really in our sweet spot. And so I'm very comfortable saying no. And I'm very comfortable turning away business because it doesn't have a match for that. And then this one is sort of a no-brainer, but it's super hard. And to be very, very candid, I am still struggling with outsourcing and delegating at the extent that I should, given where we are now as a business and as I am as a business owner. What's interesting is when women go into business, they are more likely to be solo entrepreneurs, which means that they are a one-woman shop. They often, do the business development and do the work themselves. Same thing is true sort of in the business setting, right? Is that we tend to sort of do things ourselves and we take on the pressures and the burdens of everybody else. Well, Michelle has to leave to take care of her kids, so I'm not going to give this to her. I'll just stay late and do it, no matter that I've got, 4 kids waiting at home and a husband and a mom that might need my help. Or, well, I know Tony's grandmother is very sick and he wants to spend time with her, so I'm going to just do it. But we really need to think about how do we use our talents and skills? How do we make sure that we're leveraging the talents and skills around us? Which means, how do we delegate? How do we give other people opportunity to learn and grow? How do we outsource, which is, how do you find someone, external to your business, right? Or you're external to your organization to help you with something. And that can help us move up in the organization. Because if we try to do it all ourselves, as competent as we are, as skilled as we are, as hard as we might work, we cannot get it all done at once. And that is a lesson I learned in spades when my husband left to go track the trail, right? It's like, I'm a competent woman. Of course I should be able to do all of this. I can't physically do it, can't mentally do it. And so you have to give yourself grace, and you have to really think about, with that grace comes outsourcing and delegating as needed. And here's sort of the other statistic: when men go into business, they are more likely to have a partner than women, right? Because men are automatically thinking, how do I divide and conquer? Sort of a couple last thoughts here. Don't seek perfection. Another trait that us women tend to have is that we want it all to be fully baked. We want it to all be perfect, but there is no perfection, right? Just sort of think about yourself as a .com or not a .com, but a tech product that has, a version 1 and a version 2 and a version 2.1. It's just going to slow your productivity. It slows down your decision-making. And so you aren't going to be able to respond as quickly to your boss when he or she needs a project or a decision made. When you're trying to seek perfection, you're sort of so wrapped up in all of the details that just really slows you down, right? And it clogs your brain and it doesn't allow you to think creatively. And ultimately, when we seek perfection, it really stops us and prevents us from tapping into our true potential, because we can't lean into those strengths that we really bring to the table. And then finally, celebrate success, making sure that we are that we talk it up, that we toot our own horn. Here's, and that we're sort of loud and proud about it. Oftentimes, the reason we don't get promoted in the workplace is because we tend to undersell what we've done, and we tend to be very sort of factual and underestimate the power and the contributions of what we've made relative to men who don't do that. And when we, when I was in running HR and we would sort of look at resumes and candidates that would apply for jobs, men will look at about 60% of a job description and say, oh yeah, I can do that. No problem. I can do it. And women, we tend to look at the job description and go, oh yeah, check, check, check. Oh, wow, I've never really done this. It might be experienced project manager or, 7 years of management experience. Well, I've got 6.5. So I probably shouldn't apply for this job. Well, the men would go like, of course, I'm gonna do this. And so we have to sort of really celebrate what we've done, tell our stories, and make sure that everyone knows what we've contributed. And that kind of helps to perpetuate that virtuous cycle that we want to be in. So with that is all I have to share in terms of prepared comments around breaking into the boys club. But I'm happy to answer any questions, Michelle, that you might have for your audience.
Great, thank you. And as you know, opportune moment here, we have decided we're going to do some weed cutting in the background. So I apologize for that. So if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand, or we have the chat, you can just throw them in there. But I do have some questions in the meantime. And one of the things I do want to say, I completely am on board. Like I talk to people about this all the time, like with applying for a job. And I saw it, in the 25 years that I was in corporate, like the men, you get so many resumes where it's like they might hit one or two, and then the women, it's like they feel like they have to like hit everything. And it's such a difference there. And I'm sure that makes somewhat of a difference in the hiring. And so I'm interested to see if that ever gets through to women and they change their stance on that. But one of the things you talked about earlier was networking, and we have talked a lot about that with Bosstrack and even on the Bosscast that we had. And one of the things that I find difficult is convincing younger emerging leaders the importance of networking, because they really see it as a bother, and they don't necessarily see the value yet in it. And it's, in everything they already have to do in life, they have to fit that into. Do you have anything that you'd say to that, like how to maybe look at it differently, or how to encourage them?
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're sharing that advice, and hopefully it does sort of, penetrate and percolate in the back of their head somewhere. But I would look at it as, really building strategic relationships and building friends. I mean, a lot of the mentors and sponsors in my life ended up being people that I'm still really connected to, right? And people that are still invested in my growth and success. And I guess, millennials and the Gen Zs are, are sort of really adept at social media, and they do have a lot of friends on Instagram or, wherever, Facebook or whatever platform they're on. I would say you don't have to sort of think about being friends or cultivating a relationship in that context. So it's not about sort of the many, it's about the few and those that you really feel are going to help you. And so as you're in the workplace and as you're sort of getting to know people, look around and see who's got a leadership style that you think is really effective, or who has really wowed you in a presentation that they've done, or whatever it might be. And then do make that effort in terms of reaching out and saying, hey, can we just have a virtual coffee, 15, maybe it's once a month for 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be a big investment of time. And it could be that you use them. I mean, I'm a big fan of using time or using things that I already have to do as a mechanism to achieve multiple goals. So for example, if I have a big presentation that I have to do, right, and I know that someone that I work with is a really skilled presenter, I might say, well, I have to prep for this presentation anyway, and I have to put it together and I have to tell a story. So let me go to, James, who is a great presenter, and maybe someone who could be a mentor or someone who could be a sponsor, and ask them to give me some feedback and advice, right? And so you're starting to sort of think about, well, what is it that I want to get some insight on, and how do I reach out to people and build a relationship that way? And so you can just find a couple of people that you start to do that. And you obviously don't want to just abruptly go and say, hey, can I run this by you? But sort of say, I think you're a really skilled presenter. I really love the way you tell stories. I'd love to really work that into my presentation. Can you help me with that? And that's how that can work, right? It can be super simple.
Thank you. And so one of the things, is I finished reading the book, My Life in Full by Indra Nooyi, if I'm saying that right. And one of the things that she said is to get where she got, she felt she had to learn sports and be able to talk sports. And she had to like kind of be able to speak the language of the people around her. And I know that was a long time ago, but I'm wondering if, and then I recently talked to other professional women who have taken on golf because they feel like that gets them in that that network of the high, because like the slide you showed, I mean, the executives are male, it's male dominated. So at the same time, when I came up and, you know, I rose to executive levels and I did not submit to, okay, I need to now learn sports and all of that. I mean, what would you say to that? Like, what would your recommendation be?
My recommendation is always be you. You be you. You lean into what makes you passionate, makes you strong, makes you succeed. Obviously, there is a little bit of you, just like you sort of need to know enough about what's going on in the world to be able to hold a conversation or just be aware. You can certainly learn some of those things, but I'm like you, Michelle. I never learned golf. I mean, my dad desperately wanted me to learn golf. And he's like, well, it'll really help you in business. It'll help you get ahead. And I'm like, to me, it would be like sleeping with the boss to get ahead. I'm like, why would I play golf when it's not something that I have any interest in, right? Like if that's what's going to get me ahead, then I'm actually not interested in getting ahead. So, but you can find other ways to connect. You know, there are, and that's why it's important to find those mentors and those sponsors, more importantly, in an organization, someone who can open those doors, someone in the organization, someone who does believe in you, someone who may have completely different interests than you, because that's what diversity is about as well, right? We don't all have to be the same playing golf. And those sponsors can take that back up, right? So if there are a bunch of white men, which there mostly are in senior leadership roles, and, you know, they say, well, we're doing a charity event. Why don't you come? And, you know, I've always said, well, I don't play golf. I'm happy to ride in the cart. I'm happy to have a drink with all of you because that would be fun, but I don't really play golf. And actually, as a result of some of those conversations in one of my workplaces, when we would have leadership retreats, they then added like a spa day for the people who didn't want to play golf. And then, it was mostly women, but it wasn't all women. There were certainly a few men in the spa as well, kind of enjoying not being on the golf course. So it goes back to just really find those sort of values and beliefs that you have, those things that you feel really strongly about, and lean into those. And if you do want to play golf, then have at it.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute as we go between these.
No worries.
So you also talked about delegation, and that's, as you said, it's a challenge for almost everybody. And as a new leader, that's definitely a challenge that needs to be overcome. I've seen it time and time again. One of the struggles in delegation is we're so time strapped, and people look at it as it just takes time to do, and I don't have that time. But at the same time, how do you get beyond that if you don't take the time? Do you have anything you'd recommend to get through that period of time, if there is any? I don't know. I think it's just something you have to do. But
yeah, I think it is. I think it is tough, and it is sort of that age-old problem, right? It's just faster to do it myself. But you know, the way to look at it, the way that I try to look at it, because I'm there are times when I default to, it's just faster to do it. And then I try to have this conversation with myself that, yes, it might be faster than explaining to someone. But at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is to offload tasks that are really not leveraging your skill set, or you are trying to delegate a task so that someone else can start to learn to do whatever it is that you do. And in the long run, if you don't do it, it's going to impede your mental health. It's going to affect, it might lead to burnout. It's going to affect the quality of the work. It's going to affect your ability to do other things that you want to do, whether they're fun things, whether they're necessary things, whether they're deadlines that you have to meet, right? So it comes back to, we all have capacity, and we have to recognize that we all have capacity. And if we can, sort of say, all right, I'm going to really think about this one thing that keeps happening, whether it's, formatting PowerPoints or whatever it happens to be that you want to get off your plate, or reconciling a report, or writing the first draft of a copy, right? Like, think about it. If it's hard for you to let it go off your plate, think about it as an opportunity for someone else to develop and someone else to get that experience. And sometimes that helps us, particularly as women, to say, well, they're now getting a skill, or getting to use a skill that they have, that they're not able to do it. But it's something that you have to sort of force yourself to do, right? Whether it's developing a workout routine or whatever it happens to be that you're trying to break a habit, you have to be very conscious about it. It's not going to just happen organically.
I like that, just having that speech ready for yourself. Like, anytime you come to that, remind yourself of all of that. I like that. So just switching over from kind of the breaking into the boys club topic to just general leadership. I'm curious, just for the audience, like, what do you wish you would have known when you got into leadership? Is there one thing that stands out that you just wish you would have known?
Yeah, I think for me, sort of really thinking about how I wanted to be as a leader, and not being an amalgam of all of the people that were pointed out to me as good leaders. So it goes back a little bit to the authenticity, but it's really a little bit more than that in the sense of, I know that I didn't spend any time when I got promoted thinking about, what are my leadership values? How do I really want to show up? What is the experience that I want others to have with working for me? I think I was so caught up with actually like getting promoted and getting the title that I sort of forgot about all of the stuff that actually is important as a leader. And, we're not taught really to be leaders as much as we're taught to be, or maybe taught to be a manager. And oftentimes we are just given our old job and more stuff on top. So I think that if I were to rewind the clock, 20 years or so, to that first leadership role, I would have really benefited from sitting down with a coach. Actually, I don't even know if I knew what a coach was at that time, but just even reflecting by myself or with a friend, and really just thinking about what's important to me. How do I want to be as a leader? What are those traits and values that I want to share with others? And how do I want them to experience our relationship?
I love that. And then in terms of, you talked about mentorship and sponsorship, is there a mentor that you can recall that was especially helpful to you as you kind of grew up through your leadership career?
Yeah, definitely. There was a woman at Fannie Mae, Christy, that that was a leader in the department. And when I first met her, she has this incredibly magnetic personality, super smart. And I actually went up to her and I said, I'd really love to, she wasn't my boss. And I said, I'd really love to just be able to spend time with you and have you just help me navigate, being a manager, being a leader in this organization. And what started out, we worked together for 5 years. And so what started out as sort of just a more of a mentoring kind of conversation and a relationship shifted over time, over the couple of years, to a sponsorship. And really the difference between sponsorship and mentorship is a mentor can be anyone in the organization, right? It can be someone at your level, higher up, someone that maybe works for you or works in another department, but it's really about sharing skills and giving you advice and helping you navigate sort of through certain things. But a sponsor is someone who is talking about you in a positive way behind closed doors. They're advocating for you. They're finding opportunities. They're giving you opportunities. And that's what she did for me. And, she created a new role in her organization, her part of HR, and it had never been done before. I was coming back off maternity leave. She knew I was looking to do something different. And she said, listen, I have this job. I don't even know what I needed to do, but it's the head of people strategy. We'll figure it out together. I've sold the opportunity and sold you as being the person to go take this. How do you feel? And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what this job is. I don't even know what people strategy is, but we'll go figure it out. Right. And she actually, mentor, sponsor, but she was actually, when I look back sort of across my career, that time, those 5 years there, and that time with her and a few other leaders in the organization, Betty is another one, that they really put me in a place to recognize, or they actually recognized skills and talents that I had that I didn't even really know I had myself. And so when it felt to me like they were throwing me into an opportunity, it was because they knew I had the skills and the talent to do it, but I was holding myself back and I wasn't even aware of what was possible for me. And so that was, that was 20 years ago. And that is probably one of the reasons that is one of the reasons I'm here today, kind of running my own business.
Nice. Amazing. That's amazing that you found her. Yeah, I guess, a lot of our audience is newer leaders, but if we have experienced leaders out there, one of the things that they can certainly do to help with that imbalance that we talked about at the beginning is to find those women to sponsor. And not just mentor, because I think we automatically think mentoring, but there are people that we can sponsor and really bring up. And that's part of our responsibility as, that executive experience, have been through it, have the connections to do that. So I'm glad you talked about that. In terms of leadership qualities for the new leaders out there, what do you believe are the most important leadership qualities to get started and succeed?
So I think that these traits that I would talk about are probably true for new and experienced leaders. And I've talked about authenticity, and, so I'll sort of beat a dead horse with that one and throw that back out. I also think, though, courage is really important. It's much harder. Well, actually, you know what? I don't know if it's harder as a new leader or harder as a seasoned leader, because I've seen very seasoned leaders lack courage and find it hard to be, or maybe not lack courage, but find it hard to be courageous. But courage is really important, particularly in this world where I think we do have to speak up for others. We do have to, break down barriers for those who we want to help elevate in an organization. When we want to point out when something is sort of going awry, right? Think about all the people that sort of just put their heads down and ignore fraud in an organization, or ignore the fact that there's a technical error that could lead to a crash or whatever it might be, right? So I think courage is really important, and there's different ways to be courageous. And then probably the last sort of two kind of go together, which is really empathy and inclusion. Right. I can't hear well, you're laughing, but empathy, I think it's really important, particularly in this day and age. And as I look back, when I took on leadership roles initially, I was not empathetic, right? I was probably much more like, I'm the tough boss and I'm going to tell you what to do. But that doesn't work. So being empathetic, being inclusive, really recognizing and thinking that not everybody has your experience. We don't really know what it's like to be in another person's body and shoes. And so, just try to be empathetic and try to be inclusive and realize that, come from a positive intent.
I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to laugh, but they've moved from the weed eating to the actual full-on lawn mowing the lawn. So
this is our new lives, Michelle.
Yes. So now moving on, like, what do you attribute your well-being to? Is there like a daily routine that you have that really gets you through the day, the week, like really you feel is that one thing that is the key to your well-being?
That is a really great question. And it is one that I have not done very well over the course of my career. But I did make a decision about 3 or 4 years ago to really prioritize my well-being, because I realized that, it wasn't good for me to not be at my best because I couldn't do all those things I wanted to do. So long way of saying that I walk with a friend 1 day a week, at least 1 day a week, right? And that it's not so much about the walk as much as it is about the conversation that we have during the walk, where we can talk about business, we talk about kids, our family, everything, right? And it's just a really cathartic connection that is important. And actually, this is the woman I walk with on a pretty regular basis is someone who's newer in my life. I met her when I started my business. And we started out walking as a way to like walk and talk about business. And then we built this friendship. And, it's just, that's really important. So I feel like I need sort of that kind of outlet to verbalize what's on my mind. But then I do work out with a trainer, and we use one of our workouts, at least one of our workouts, mostly one workout a week, to really do a tough workout. So it might be a tough bike sprint or a tough run, but kind of the philosophy that he has and that I've embodied is that if you're so focused on just pumping your legs as fast as you can't think about anything else, right? Like all you're thinking about is, I just need to finish this and I need to put all my energy into this. And that kind of helps to just clear the mind. And, I'm not like this super fit athlete or anything like that, but I am an athlete. That's what Nike says. So, that's what I just do. And if I'm doing it on my own, which is not as much because I kind of need that outside motivation. But I love just pumping up whatever the music is. And between the music and just the focus on getting through that painful whatever, that is what really helps me.
And speaking about music, do you have a go-to song when you're not feeling so confident, or you just need to get yourself moving for the day that you go to, like a go-to pump up song?
I always struggle with this one. Like, what's your walk-on song? So you may have gathered, but I don't usually lack confidence. But if there's Aretha Franklin, Respect, is a song that whenever I hear that, or, when I think about that just has a lot of energy. I know it's an old song, but she is the queen of the soul, right? Or queen, she's the queen, whatever she's the queen of. And I think her music, along with so many others, it's like really hard, but I think if I were to pick one song, that would probably be it.
Thank you for that. And so just to wrap up, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about Silverene Group, or wrap up with anything that you feel that you might have missed that you want to kind of relay to the audience.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. I think we've covered so much in our conversation. I would just sort of say to folks, as a way of sort of just wrapping up, is really think about your values and who you want to be and how you want to sort of lean into your talents and strengths. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want, and just, chart out the life that you want to lead and that you want to live. And in terms of the Silverene Group, I can't believe that we've been in business for 6 years. That just seems kind of quite surreal, actually. And to think about navigating through 2 years of COVID, nothing prepares you for this, right? Especially as a new entrepreneur. But we try to live by what we do with our clients. We love to work with companies really of all sizes, but really companies that are working on building a better workplace for the people that work with them. So whether you have 5 or 10 people or 50,000 people, we have clients sort of really ranging from all of that size, and we work on that intersection of people strategy and culture, which means we help you assess where your culture is, help you design where you want it to be, help you design a roadmap of how do you get from A to B. And that journey of transformation includes, really thinking about how you're going to bring to life diversity, equity, and inclusion in your organization, how you're going to create a sense of belonging for people, how you're going to coach and nurture the staff that you have, how leaders can develop. And so we do leadership development and leadership coaching. We facilitate workshops. As I mentioned, we do assessments, we'll do design, because it's all a part of helping the leaders in the organization, really create that kind of environment, particularly now in this world where we are really forging the path of what the new work world is going to look like. We're not all going to go back into offices. People are struggling to navigate, this hybrid life. And so that's what we love to do is, problem solve and work with leaders that are invested in making a better place for everybody, and in turn, helping their communities and helping the world. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And then lastly, if somebody wanted to contact you or reach out to you with questions after this, after watching this, is there a good place? Would it be LinkedIn, or how would they contact you?
Yeah, so fantastic. So there is, I may not have kept it up long enough for your recording, but there is a slide in the deck that has my contact info, but I'm on LinkedIn. I am the only Shaara Roman, so it's at SHAARAROMAN on LinkedIn. You can also go to our website, which is www.silverenegroup.com, SILVERENEGROUP.com. And between those two, you should be able to track me down.
Okay, well, before the lawnmower comes back, we'll go ahead and wrap up. I really appreciate your time and you taking the time out to speak to me and the audience. And I have enjoyed the talk and look forward to future discussions. So I appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Great. Michelle, thanks so much for inviting me. And thank you for sharing, allowing me to share some of this with your community, and have a great rest of your day as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
And bye, everybody.
Bye.